Hey, do you have questions about starting or growing a successful freight broker or freight agency business? If you do, my name is Dennis Brown. This is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live, and this is where I help new and even established brokers start and grow a successful freight broker or freight agency business. So you're in the right place. I do these lives, Q&As. Typically, I do them weekly, and today we're going to jump into a live Q&A. But for now, hold your questions, okay? Hold your questions. We're going to let a few people get live. We're going to do a little intro, and then we'll jump into Q&A. But hold your questions for now. As you're coming into the feed, do me a favor. If you're catching this on replay, hit me up with hashtag replay. I love to hear from my replay folks. If you are live, hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. I'd love to hear from you because we're first going to do some shout outs, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A. So hold tight. We're going to get things started here in just a minute. We got a few people joining. We've got Devin Coleman from Markham, Illinois. Welcome. He's number one for the shout outs. Again, we'll do some quick shout outs. Normally we have people from the United States and maybe Central America and maybe India and maybe Canada and Australia. We have people from all over the world. You know, I've trained over 10,000 students become freight brokers and freight agents over the last 15 years. And that is my students have been in 16 different countries, which is kind of crazy to me, but it's true. So I do appreciate you guys being here. And let's finish with some of the shout outs. We got Michael Moreno from Miami, Florida. Welcome. We got Nadagargan 258 from Turkey. Welcome. We got Becky Younger from Joplin, Missouri. Welcome. She's plugged credit guru from Denver. Sweet. Awesome. We got Sandra from Florida. We got Jim Davis from Frankfort, Illinois. We got Philip from Queens, New York, R&R Express. Awesome. So again, we've got some people jumping on live. Thank you for being here. Today is a live Q&A, but I want you to hold your questions until I say go. And then at that point, if you have questions about freight broker startup or rating or freight broker sales or marketing or scaling or operations or dispatching or how AI is going to impact, you know, that's a big topic these days, how AI is going to impact freight brokerage or freight agents. So I'm expecting to have a bunch of questions today. And I'm glad that you guys are here. Shane from Utah, as always, Shane. We got Rosanda from California. We got Corey Buchan from Billings, Montana. Welcome. Welcome. So we got a bunch of people live. Again, we're going to give it maybe another 30 seconds or so, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A. Hold your questions until I say go. And I do appreciate your patience, appreciate you guys being here. I've been doing these live Q&As for many, many years now. I did take a couple months off during, for a little vacation, a little R&R, and then I did get sick. Last week was my first week back. You guys did a great job. You had a lot of great questions. So as long as we have some really good questions today, I'm going to come back every week and continue these Freight Broker Bootcamp live sessions, okay? Typically, these range anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, depending upon the number of questions. And we got Jazzy 101 from Sacramento. Awesome. Sweet. Jasmeet Singh from Sacramento. Awesome. Sweet. All right, guys. So listen, we're going to jump in. We're going to get this show on the road. I know you guys are busy. So if you have questions about freight broker startup or freight broker sales or operations or marketing or anything in between, anything that's holding you back from starting or growing a successful freight broker or freight agency business, hit me up in the comments with your questions. I will do my best to try to get to everybody's questions, but there are times when I have more questions than I have time. So if I don't get to your question this week, then come back next week. We'll try to answer those questions there. I do appreciate it. If you are a part of my Freight Broker Bootcamp startup program, okay, and your questions aren't answered here, you can always send a message to support@freightbrokerbootcamp.com. My staff has been trained to answer all of the most frequent questions. And if they don't know the answer, they're going to pass it over to me. Okay. So hit me up with questions you guys have. And be specific. Okay. Be specific. All right. If you just say, how do I get shippers? My answer to you is going to be sales. Okay. But if you're more specific, we can get nuanced. We can get down into the details, right? Because the devil's in the details when it comes to particularly sales, right? Or anything in that matter, for that matter, right? So go ahead, hit me up with the questions and let's see where we can get. Oh, Shane, you got sick? Oh, Nasty. I was sick for the better part of 2 weeks. It was nasty. Nasty stuff. I hope you're feeling better. Let's see what we got here. We got getting ready contracts for clients. Okay. If you have a specific question, hit me up. I'm not sure what that question is. So if you have a very specific question, hit me up in the comments with that question. I'll be happy to try to help. So now the ball's in your court. Hit me up with any questions you guys have, whether again, that be about freight broker startup, how to get your authority, freight agent startup, what you need to do in order to get started as an agent, sales, how to get shippers, how to use LinkedIn, how to do cold calling. Be specific about your questions. And again, I will jump right in. And I'm hoping that we can have a really good session. If you guys are all questioned out because of last week, then I will exit stage left. I'll let you guys go on your way, and I'll come back next week or maybe in a couple weeks, and we'll do another Q&A. So if you have questions, hit me up now. If not, forever hold your peace. I'm going to be taking off. I got a lot of stuff on my to-do list today, okay? And I'm sure you guys do too. So let's rock and roll with some questions, or I'm outie, okay? All right, question. Bootcamp does not cover the what ifs. What if a carrier has an issue and will be late to deliver? How lenient are shippers when dealing with their load? Okay, great. That's a great question. See how that's very specific? It's very detailed. It's going to require a nuanced answer. That's a perfect question, Becky. Thank you so much for the question. So let's read it again. Bootcamp does not cover the what ifs. What if your carrier has an issue and will be late to delivery? How lenient are shippers when dealing with their loads? The answer is every shipper is different. There's a reason why Freight Broker Bootcamp can't handle every what if, because there are way too many what ifs and way too many variables. So the fact of the matter is every shipper is going to have a different level of acceptance and how they handle late pickups, late deliveries, service issues in general. All right. So you're going to have to kind of feel that out. Every shipper is a little different. We've had shippers, I've known shippers that have been like, all right, no worries. If he's going to be an hour late, just have him come in. We'll get him unloaded. Other ones say, well, listen, if he's going to be an hour late, you're going to have to schedule an appointment for tomorrow. Okay. So it ranges. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to understand what your shipper's expectations are before that. Your goal is to understand those expectations before there's an issue. But if there is an issue, then you have to kind of follow their lead, and you have to kind of follow the curriculum and the protocol that they have if there is an issue. Like, for example, if your driver's running late for pickup, right, and he's going to be an hour late, it might not be first come, first serve. It might be appointment only. Right? You may have to set another appointment later in the day or the next day. That happens. Okay. Shippers are busy. You can't be late for picks or deliveries. Now there's others, particularly smaller shippers, where it won't be an issue. So my answer to you, the long and short of this whole thing is every shipper is a little bit different, but most shippers understand that this industry, there are a lot of moving parts and variables that we can't control. Weather in particular, traffic, things of that nature, right? There are things that we can't always control. So most shippers are probably going to be pretty understanding of getting that load picked up or, loaded or unloaded. The problem is going to be is if you continue to not do what you say you're going to do, meaning you say you're going to be there at 8 a.m. and you show up at 9. Well, they're going to record that. And the problem is that may affect your future business, right? So the most important part about being a freight broker, freight agent is doing what you say you're going to do. Under promise and over deliver. So I hope that helps, Becky. Appreciate it. Good question. All right. How do you get shippers, and what do you do with clients who always ask lower rates with each new load on the same lanes? Okay, cool. So how do you get shippers? The answer to that is sales. Okay. So sales is sales is sales. You have to find, connect, and engage with your prospects, with your target market, with whoever your ideal customer profile is. If you're in the produce industry, then I strongly suggest, number one, niching down. niching down into a specific niche, whether that be an industry, whether that be a geography, whether that be a type of equipment, or a combination of those, niching down, creating a list of prospects that fit that exact niche, and then doing some sort of outreach. I promote and teach and use a multi-touch point outreach strategy, which is a combination of cold calling over the phone, emailing, LinkedIn, and face-to-face when possible. Okay, it's not always possible geographically, depending upon your niche, because a lot of times you're not calling on people that are in your backyard, right? Within 50 miles in your local area. So I do a multi-touch point outreach strategy. The most important part of that whole deal is creating a compelling sales hook. The first 5 to 15 seconds is the hardest part of sales. And the reason why I say that is because almost any industry, particularly B2B, people are getting cold called and all the time. And so what happens, your key is you have to be different. You have to stand out from the crowd. So you can't use the same 3 or 4 generic pitches that are out there, like, hey, we got trucks in your area. Wonder if we could, compete for some of your freight or do a bid or, move some of your freight. And they've heard it too many times. All you're doing with those generic pitches is triggering a negative response. That negative response is because they've been conditioned to know what you're going to say next. So when they recognize the pattern, when they recognize that cadence, all of a sudden they come up with an objection. Oh, we're not interested, or we're happy with our current providers, or we don't use brokers, or I don't have time. Whatever the number of objections are, that's what they'll do when they recognize that pattern. But if you sound different, if you have a compelling and relevant and contextual sales hook, which is what I teach in my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, okay, which is a more advanced sales training program. It's not my startup program, but it's a more advanced program. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. If you can create a compelling sales hook, you can make a good first impression, and you can navigate that first 15 seconds so you can get to the next 30, 60, 90, 120 seconds of building rapport, asking some good questions, qualifying the shipper, and then navigating the sale. So the second part of your question is, what do you do with a client that's always asking for lower rates on each load on the same lanes? Well, here's the thing. What you have to understand, my philosophy on rates is I am never the cheapest. And I have no problem with telling clients that I'm never going to be the cheapest. The reason being is because if they continue to talk to me after I tell them I'm not going to be the cheapest, there's no sense in us arguing anymore, right? So a lot of times on a cold call, in the first, 90 seconds of that cold call, I might say something like, hey, Joe, I just want to let you know this up front because I don't want to waste your time. If your number one priority and you're exclusively focused on price, okay, and I'd have to be, and you're looking for only the cheapest, I'm probably not your guy. But if you'd like to understand why my clients pay me a little bit more, I'd be happy to explain that to you. And I zip my lip. And if they say, yeah, I only talk to people that are cheapest rate, I exit stage left, hang up the phone, and move on to the next. If they say, oh no, it's, we do need competitive rates, but we're also focused on relationships and service and value and all those sorts of things, well, then I continue to talk, right? Because now I've qualified them that I don't have to be the cheapest, and we can continue that conversation. So that's how I handle those prospects, and that's how I would handle a shipper. The reality is that, the cheapest is never synonymous with the best, right? There are brokers that are going to rate their product, their service down here. There are brokers that are going to rate their product up here, their service up here, and there are brokers that are going to be up here. The reality is that in a lot of cases, the deliverable becomes very different. The bottom of the barrel, they're scraping the bottom of the barrel of carriers who don't have experience, who don't have a good safety record, who don't have the expertise to make sure the freight picks up and delivers on time. They don't know how to solve those problems that happen along the way, which happen all the time. And so you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, right? You are going to get what you pay for. If you pay a carrier $1 a mile, you're going to get $1 a mile service. If you pay a carrier $2 a mile, you're going to get $2 a mile service. If you pay a carrier $3 a mile, that's kind of how it works. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to pay $3 a mile or $2 a mile on every load. But the reality is I'm trying to give you a visual so you understand that price is relevant, but it should not be the number one determining factor. What should be the number one determining factor for the shipper is pick up and deliver on time in good condition with no problems. Okay? That should be their focus. Now, that price, there's times when the price might be here, and there's probably times when the price might be here, because we are in a very dynamic market. All right. Rates go up, rates go down, fuel goes up, fuel goes down, weather goes bad, weather gets better. Right. So there's a lot that goes into it. Okay. Hope that helps. Okay. If that answer helped any of you, give me a thumbs up in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Question from Rosanda. I'm new here. How do you find shippers? Okay. Well, there's a bunch of ways you can find shippers. Some are free and some you have to pay for. So let me explain to you. There are databases online, like let's call it like Thomas Registry is a big database of manufacturers. So you can go in there and you can search by specific industries, and you can make a list of companies that you're looking for in a specific niche, right? So Thomas Registry is an example of a free database, right? There are also paid databases. For example, Zoom Info, one of the most popular, but also one of the most expensive. Now, what I'm a big fan of in looking for shippers, if you're looking specifically for leads, is I'm going to give you guys a link that you can go to. You guys are going to love this, by the way, if I can find it. Sorry. Let me just create it. Here you go. Oops. Oh, here it is right here. Boom. All right. FreightBrokerBootcamp.com/free leads. If you go there, it's going to bring you to a site called Apollo, and you will be able to sign up for free with no credit card and just an email. Now, when you log into there, once you get logged in, it's very simple. It'll take you 30 seconds. You get logged in. You can actually search millions and millions of companies in this database, and it's absolutely free. Okay. Now you can search by specific industries and geography and size and all that, right? So there's a lot of variables in there you can do, and you can compile a list. You can also, if you find ABC Widget Company, you can also search by the shipping manager or the warehouse manager or the transportation manager, and it'll give you that name as well, right? Now, you can get a lot of data there for free. And there are also, the reason why they provide this service is because they also have paid services in addition to that. Like, say, for example, you specifically want their cell phone, or you specifically want an email address, or you want to use some of their other services for follow-up or emailing. You know, there are some other paid services in there. But this database you can search absolutely free. I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of my students enroll in this in Apollo for free using that link, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads. And I've never had one of them that's been disappointed. Okay. So it's absolutely free. So there are paid databases like Zoom. There are absolutely free databases like Thomas Registry. And then there's examples of things like Apollo, which is kind of a hybrid where you get a lot of data free, but there's also paid portions. So I hope that helps. And I also, on my YouTube channel, if you go to, if you just search YouTube for Freight Broker Bootcamp, you'll see my channel. You can search on there for shipper leads, and you'll see I've got a ton of videos where I talk about different free sources. So I hope that helps. All right. Let me try to get to the next question. Good question. Give me one sec. Tips on getting shippers that insist they want to have assets. Okay, so here's the thing. If a shipper has a policy where they only deal with asset-based carriers, okay, it's very, very difficult to change their mind. Now, number one, here's what I can tell you. Some of the people that say that are actually doing business with brokers as well, but they're using that as an objection because they know that when they say that, freight brokers many times will tuck their tail and hang up the phone, right? They won't bother them anymore because they mark in their lead system asset only and they don't call them again. So shippers are pretty smart sometimes, right? They know what gets them off the phone quickly, right? So sometimes they'll be telling you the truth, and sometimes maybe they'll be giving you a little bit of a white lie. Okay. So that's a fact. You have to understand that up front. But the reality is, it's very hard to change someone's mind that doesn't want their mind changed. So what I would strongly suggest is maybe ask a few questions like, well, I totally understand that, but have you ever used brokers in the past? And try to start a dialogue. Try to get them to talk to you a little bit. Try to find out what happened in that situation, right? Try to find out what happens in the event that, that their primary carrier has a breakdown or a weather issue or the driver gets sick or whatever the case may be. What do they do then? Would they ever consider a broker as a backup as long as the assets are primary? So you got to ask some questions. You got to start a dialogue, right? So that's a strategy. The other part of it would be, if possible, try to meet them face to face, right? Try to go on their dock, try to set an appointment, try to get inside and try to get a face-to-face meeting, because what you're going to find is they're probably going to be, if they are giving you a smokescreen objection, they're probably going to be a lot more truthful, right? They're probably going to say, we do use brokers, Dennis, but, we're really trying to focus on asset, right? So at that point, your goal is to differentiate yourself. You can say, you show a little empathy. I totally understand. There's a lot of brokers out there that promise the moon and then they underdeliver, right? But let me explain to you why my clients work with me. And then if they're willing to listen to you for a couple of minutes, you can then differentiate yourself and then use that as a way to try to build rapport and to build a bridge so that you can try to continue that relationship. So don't expect that in that meeting or on that call that they're going to allow you to do a freight quote. Don't expect that they're going to give you business anytime soon. But what happens is, if you can build some trust and you can build a bridge and some foundation, you can try to continue that relationship so that you have an opportunity down the road to possibly get it, work your way into there when the timing is right. So I hope that helps. Question: how much is a freight broker agent training program, and what other equipment is needed in addition to getting going, in addition to computer, laptop, cell phone? Okay. So Robert Moore asks, how much is the freight broker agent training program? Okay. So Freight Broker Bootcamp is my startup program. If you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com, that is the most cost-effective, comprehensive online freight broker and freight agent startup program. Okay. Well known throughout the industry. We trained over 10,000 students. Now, that is a self-paced online course. That is not a coaching program. That is not something where you're going to have to wait for teachers or coaches or instructors to come online. You have 24/7, 365 access to that, right? So the membership for a 1-year membership starts at $185. If you want a lifetime platinum membership with lifetime support, I think it's like $389 right now, right? So the prices are scheduled to go up maybe in the first quarter of this year, but right now those are the prices. Very, very affordable. Plus we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money back guarantee. I can't make it much better than that, okay? So that's the training, how much the training is, right? So specifically, your question, let me get back to your question. Your question was also, how much does it cost to start as a freight agent, right? So startup for a freight agent is very inexpensive. Get a little bit of training. You need internet and a computer and basically a desk, whether you start, most people are going to work from home, right? Particularly freight agents. And you don't need a license. You don't need a bond. You don't need insurance. You don't need any of that, right? So the cost is very, very low. Once you find a freight broker to work with, because a freight agent works under a licensed freight broker as an independent contractor, and they typically get paid between 50 and 70% of the profit on any loads that they originate, any shippers they get, and any loads that they move. So once you get set up under a broker, you're going to be able to get access to a load board. You're going to be able to get access to a TMS. The costs vary on that. Typically, load boards and TMS might cost you a few $100, right? It's not a lot of money. I mean, you're talking about a freight agency. You're talking about building a multi-million-dollar business for a few $100 upfront and a few $100 a month. Okay. I have friends and clients and students of mine that do over $1 million a month in sales. I have friends and clients and students of mine that make over $1 million a year as an agent. Okay. So I'm not saying that's what you're going to do. I'm not promising you anything. They're obviously in the top 1%, but if they can make $1 million a year, I'm assuming you can probably make 50, 75, 100, 150,000 a year working from home as a freight agent or more. So I hope that helps. There's also, if you go on my website, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/blog, and you do a search and you do startup cost, I have a full blog post with a full breakdown of all the startup costs for brokers and all the startup costs for freight agents, a very detailed breakdown of it. So I hope that helps. Okay, Brett, I'm wondering what's the best way to start each call would be. I'm a new freight broker looking for tips and tricks. Okay, so the best way, I can't give you a script, okay, because there is no one size fits all script. But I can give you a strategy. I can give you a tool. I can give you a roadmap, a blueprint on how you can create your own script. The most important part of your freight broker cold calls is the first 5 to 15 seconds, like I said before. If you use a generic script, you're going to trigger a negative response from those shippers because they've heard it too many times before. So you want to create a compelling sales hook, right? This is where we talked about before. This is where my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching program, right, which is an 8-week live program where I coach you personally and teach you my entire freight broker sales system, tools, strategies that I use to do over $200 million as a freight broker. And many of my clients and students have used to build multi-million-dollar companies. Okay. So if you want to get on the wait list, that program is it's not open for enrollment right now. If you want to get on the wait list and get notified, just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Okay. That's where you'll do that. So getting back to the kind of the details of the question, you want to create a compelling sales hook. Your goal is to be different, sound different, to differentiate yourself, right? And so rather than saying, hey, well, my name's Dennis, we're with XYZ Logistics, we've always got trucks in your area, I wonder if we can help you out. They've heard that a million times before. It's going to get a 99.9% rejection rate. Rather than using something like that, you might gather some sales intelligence from their LinkedIn profile. You might gather some sales intelligence from their company website. You might gather some sales intelligence from Google or a trade journal specific to their niche, and then use that as a way to leverage yourself into the door by being different and showing a different level of understanding about their business. Let me give you an example. It's an easy one. Let's say, for example, ABC Widgets is one of my prospects. Before the call, I go on their website. I see in their press releases that they recently acquired another company, a competitor. 3 months ago, they acquired this competitor. And rather than calling up with that same generic pitch, I call up and I say, Joe, my name's Dennis, and I just wanted to introduce myself really quick and congratulate you guys. I heard about the acquisition of XYZ Widget Company. I was curious. I've got quite a bit of experience and background in working in in the logistics industry, in the trucking industry. I was curious. I know that these types of integrations with two different companies can be very painful. How's it been for you so far? Right. So that I just did that off the top of my head. Right. So the reality is what we've done is we've taken a relevant contextual piece of sales intelligence and we created a quick intro that is totally different than anybody else. And then they say, it's got some ups and downs, right? So now we've started a little bit of dialogue. I've gathered a little bit of sales intelligence from him. And then at that point, that's when we can go into, right, not beyond our compelling sales hook. We can start going into our value proposition and what we offer and why we're different and rapport building and asking questions and all the things that come along with sales, right? So, you should absolutely, before every one of your sales calls, be gathering some sales intelligence. You should be visiting their website and understanding what products they sell. You should be visiting their website about recent news. you should be looking at their LinkedIn profile and their company LinkedIn profile to understand what's going on there. Maybe you're doing a quick Google search about the company or about the specific niche, and you're going to use that sales intelligence to create a compelling sales hook. There's other ways to do it, but obviously I can't get long-winded here. And that's the reason why I put together the Sales Accelerator program. Had over 1,000 students go through that program. And every one of those students that goes through the program has an opportunity to do a survey at the end after completing it. And that survey they've ranked the program a 9.2 out of 10. Compared to any of the other programs I've ever been involved with, a 9.2 out of 10. I would have been happy with a 7, ecstatic with an 8. I say that all the time, but it's a 9.2 after over 1,000 students have went through that program. So if you guys want to get on the wait list for that, it's probably going to open up in Q1. I'm not sure the exact date yet, but if you get on the wait list, you'll get notified when spots open up and when you can enroll. Okay. So hope that helps. All right, let me scroll and look for some more questions. Dave asks, I was in logistics for 16 years, did well from local PD to transportation manager, been out for 8 years selling real estate. Suggest owner or agent, almost done with boot camp. You know, Dave, it's hard for me to give you that answer without knowing a lot more information. I do appreciate the background. So the fact that you have a background in transportation and logistics obviously suits you well. You know, a lot of the lingo and a lot of it goes inside the industry, at least from a 10,000 foot level, you're going to understand what that is, even if you haven't been involved specifically with freight brokerage, right? So you do have a baseline understanding what's going on. So that's going to speed up your learning curve in your launch process. Excuse me. As for getting your freight broker authority or starting as an agent, I think some of that depends upon your financial situation. If you're in a situation where you've got good credit and you've got some good finances and you want to get your own broker authority, it's not a problem, right? It's very simple. $300 application. You got to get a surety bond, excuse me, and some other basics, but it's pretty easy to get your freight broker authority. And then you can start navigating the startup process. But I like to tell people, listen, if you have any questions as to whether you're ready to get your freight broker authority and start as a freight broker, become a freight agent. A freight agent doesn't require any insurance. It doesn't require a bond. It doesn't require an authority. It doesn't require any of that, right? You don't have to do the billing. You don't have to do the collections. You don't have to do the back office. You don't have to worry about the technology. You simply find and service shippers that are specific to your niche because you're operating under a licensed freight broker and you're typically going to get 50 to 70% of the profit on any load. So for example, for those of you who don't know, if a shipper is going to pay you $1,000 and you're going to pay a carrier $800 and there's $200 in gross profit, agents are typically going to get 50 to 70% of that, which is $100 to $140 commission on that one load. Okay. So if you do one of those loads a day or two of those loads a day, you can see how that can add up very, very quickly. Right. So when I sold my brokerage back in 16, I think the last number that I remember is our average agent working from home did $107,000 in commission. Now that meant those are people that were doing 30 to 50, and those are people that were doing $500,000 or more in commission, right? So $107,000 working from home. That was about a decade ago. Okay. So let me get a quick drink. Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So I think that hopefully that helps. If not, hit me up with a follow-up. Becky Younger, how important is it to start using a TMS program? Well, regardless whether you're a broker or an agent, you don't absolutely need a TMS day one. Okay. Because a TMS really doesn't do anything until you have freight to move. Okay. So you don't, it's not an absolute must day one, but because you can get your first clients and start moving freight on paper, on a spreadsheet, on a Google sheet, right? In a folder. if you really wanted to. But what's going to happen, the advantage of a TMS is that it is a repository and a workflow for your customer freight and your carrier data, right? So if you're going to start, you could probably start without it, but my suggestion to you is once you get your first client, you're probably going to want to invest in a TMS because there are a lot of advantages to it. If you guys are looking specifically for a TMS, I've partnered with one of the leading companies in the industry, a gentleman by the name of Tim Hyam that I've known for many, many years. Great guy. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/TMS. It's a company called Ascend. You can sign up there with no credit card, absolutely free. Okay. So you can get a free trial with no credit card, just an email. All you have to do is when you sign up, in the coupon code, you have to put FBBC. Let them know that you're coming from my community. They put a special deal together where you can get signed up with a free trial. Actually, it's not even a free trial. You can get set up with a free account, and then if you want to add additional features, you can upgrade to those features. It's very affordable. I've had hundreds of students that have went through this process. I've gotten a lot of great feedback. As a matter of fact, I've never had a student that went through it that didn't like the Ascend product. Okay. So, we put together a strategic relationship with them. If you let them know when you click on that link that you are with Freight Broker Bootcamp, FBBC, they will make sure that you have that special deal. They'll make sure they take care of you. And that would be a great place for you to go. Hope that helps. No, I use my Gmail. I used my Gmail. So I don't think that's the case. How do you designate a process agent? So just so you guys understand, if you want to get your freight broker authority and your license to the FMCSA, there's a few things you need to do. You need to get your freight broker bond. You need to get your UCR, and you also need to get a BOC3, which is your process agent. If you go to let's see, I might have a link for it. Yeah, here you go. Here's a link for process agents. I just put it into the chat. That's a link from the FMCSA website where they have a whole list of process agents that they recommend. Okay. So you can find that in the chat, right? It's fmcsa.gov/registration/process agent, right? They have an entire list of process agents, BOC3s, where you can get them. Some costs are very, very low. Some are more expensive, but ultimately it's very inexpensive for a process agent. Okay. But that's a good question. Thanks for asking. Okay. Where were we at? Let me find the next question. Okay. If you are quoting a lane, how to know lumper cost? Who pays for lumper cost? Okay, so really good question. So let me just draw a picture for everybody because not everybody's starting from the same place. When you get a load from a shipper, sometimes at the pickup and sometimes at the delivery, there are going to be what's called a lumper. And a lumper is someone who is paid to either load or unload the truck. Okay, so it's a fee for loading or unloading. Now, this isn't all the time. Most cases when you pick up or deliver, there's not lumper fees, okay? But sometimes there are. You have a lumper fee, and that goes outside of the freight rate. So say the shipper is going to pay you $1,000 to move the load. You're going to pay the carrier $800, but there's also a lumper fee. The shipper should pay any lumper fees associated with it as long as you have a legitimate receipt. But your question should be, before you accept the load, asking that shipper, are there any lumpers on this load? Right? And if they say yes, say, I'm assuming that you'll reimburse with a receipt. If they say yes, great. If they say no, then you need to stop right there because what they're expecting you to do is to take the lumper out of your fee, out of your $1,000 cost. So you have to make sure that you understand that you're not going to pay the lumper. Now you will end up paying the lumper, but you're not going to pay it from your $1,000. Let's say the lumper is $250 to unload the truck. What'll happen is you'll compensate that lumper, and then with a receipt, right, you'll invoice the shipper for that extra $250 with the receipt. They'll then compensate you. They won't give you $1,000. They'll give you $1,250, and then you will be made whole from that lumper that you paid the $250 to. Does that make sense? So I hope that makes sense. Good question, though. I like those really nuanced questions. Marissa asks, what is the most unique and effective attention getter you've heard? Okay, so if you're talking about a pattern interrupt, right? A pattern interrupt is when you use some sort of a phrase or strategy to interrupt that person's pattern on the other end of the phone, right? So I'll give you an example. Let me see if I can find this. Nah, that's not going to work. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I want to give you a real example. Okay, so a pattern interrupt, I'm going to give you an example of one, and I think this is a really good one for you. Anybody could use this. So let's say, for example, what was your name again? I got to just pull your name up. Okay, Marissa, if I'm cold calling you, I might say something like, I get through to you, I'm dialing your extension, you pick up the phone and I say, hey, Marissa. And you say, oh, hey, what's up? And I say, Marissa, this is Dennis. You're most likely going to hate me. I'm a freight broker. So if you want to hang up now, I totally understand. But will you give me 30 seconds and I'll explain why I called, right? So your goal there is to pattern interrupt them. It's to not sound like every other call they've gotten that day. It's to get them to chuckle or laugh. And a lot of times what will happen is they'll say, all right, Dennis, what do you got, right? You got 30 seconds. You got 60 seconds, right? So at that point, that's a pattern interrupt. The value of that pattern interrupt is, number one, it differentiates you. Number two, you now know you have their attention because they've said, I'm listening, right? A lot of times when you call a prospect and you just run into, you say, oh, hey, Marissa, this is Dennis Brown with whatever, we work with XYZ, right? You don't even know if they're listening. They may be on another call. They may be typing. They're halfway listening, right? So you now know you have their attention and they've given you permission. So that type of a pattern interrupt is a great way to start the call, particularly if you don't have a lot of experience in sales. Now, there's a million different versions of pattern interrupts, right? I mean, there's a ton of them. There's not just one, right? So there's a lot of different versions of pattern interrupts that you can create. That just happens to be one that's not focused on freight broker necessarily, sounds like everybody else, right? So a pattern interrupt is something where you differentiate yourself using a strategy like what I just described to you. So I hope that helps. If you have a follow-up, let me know. Yeah. Sharon asks, can you share the process of obtaining the freight broker license and price? Okay, so in order to become a licensed freight broker, there's a few things you need to do. Number one, you need to file your application with the FMCSA. That's a $300 application fee. Secondly, you need to get a BOC3, which is your process agent. That typically, I think, is like maybe $50 roughly. The third is you need to file your UCR. I think for brokers now, I think that's $60 or around there. And then you need to get your freight broker bond, your freight broker, right? Your BMC 84, BMC 85, your freight broker bond. Now, the bond is the most expensive part of becoming a licensed freight broker. And the price can range from $1,000, and I've seen bonds that cost $10,000, right? But that cost of that bond are heavily determined based on your personal credit. So if you have really good credit, 700, 750 plus credit score, then you're probably going to be closer to the 1,000. If you have 550, 600 credit score, then you're probably going to go up from there and you may be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 or more. That's an annual bond cost. Once you have all of those checkbox, boom, 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 the FMCSA will make your broker authority active, and you are now a licensed broker. That's the process. Okay. So I hope that helps. Okay. Question. All of the brokers I talked to want a book of business to work for them. How do you get hired without that? Okay. Good question. So here's the thing. The larger companies, the more established freight agent programs, like my old company, Logistic Dynamics, you're going to need a book of business. Chances are you're going to need a book of business, which means you already have to have an established client list that will work with you. Okay. So if you go to those larger, more established companies, then that's the answer you're going to get the majority of the time. But if you focus on smaller brokerages, maybe a brokerage that's been in business for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years, and maybe they're doing $1 million, $5 million, $10 million in sales. That's the market you want to go after, because those companies are looking to grow. They don't have the capital to go out and pay somebody a $60,000 or $80,000 base salary to go get clients. So a lot of times those companies will bring you as an independent agent, commission only. So if you focus on smaller companies, that's the key. And if you can focus on companies that are local to you, where you can actually go face to face, build a relationship, build some trust, that's even better. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Find 50 companies, 50 brokerages that are doing between $1 million and $10 million in sales. They've been in business for, say, 1 to 10 years. Okay. And they're doing a small amount of sales. They're a pretty small company, right? Sometimes it's hard for you to determine that, but usually if they have 3, 5, 8, 10 employees, they're usually pretty small, right? So use that, build that list, and then do outreach to all of them through phone or through email. Again, this is sales. Even though you're looking to get hired, it's sales. If you reach out and have a conversation with those 50 companies, okay, I guarantee you, I'll bet you $1,000 right now that you will get an opportunity to become a freight agent. Now, here's what I can also guarantee you. If you call 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them and they all tell you no and you quit, I guarantee you, and I'll bet you $1,000 you never succeed. I've never had anybody that's taken me up on that request, because everybody who's followed my instructions to focus in on smaller brokerages, call 30, 40, 50 of them as needed, right? Make a list of them and then reach out to them through phone and email, LinkedIn, so on and so forth, and do a sales process like if you can't sell here's the reality, guys. If you can't sell yourself into a zero risk proposition for the broker, where they don't have to pay you anything up front, they only pay you on the back end when you bring on a new client and then deliver the freight. If you can't sell yourself into that position, you're not going to succeed as a freight broker or as a freight agent. Okay. I'm just being totally honest with you. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to be a hard ass, but that's the reality. So that's the process. It's really simple. Focus in on small brokers and you'll get a lot more. Now, I'm not talking about a broker who just got their authority yesterday or last month. My suggestion would be brokers who have been in business at least a year, who already have customers. Maybe they're doing $500,000, $1 million, $2 million a year. They've been through that initial process where they understand the billing and the collections. They've got a TMS and they've got all these things in place, and you're looking to grow with them. They're going to be much more likely to hire you. Now, the cool thing is once you are there and you build a book of business, say you build a book of business that's $300,000, $500,000, $700,000, $1 million in gross revenue, you can then take that book and go anywhere, because you don't sign a non-compete. Most agencies aren't going to require a non-compete. And so then you can take that book wherever you want, or you can stay there and continue to build the relationship. So it's a little bit of a stepping stone. So I hope that helps. Question. How much is your live coaching and what does the schedule look like? Okay. So I do not do live coaching for the Freight Broker Startup. That's where you would go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. And that is an online, go at your own pace, Freight Broker Startup course. Okay. Let's get that understood first. But if you are interested in the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, A Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is typically for people that are already a broker or already an agent. They're struggling to get their first 5 or 10 clients. They're struggling to hit their first $1 million in sales, right? And they're looking for a coach to help mentor them on the sales process of how to get shippers, right? With a proven system. You go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist, okay? So that program is not open for enrollment right now, but you will get notified. Now, there are options, there are variables for that program. The last time I launched that program, the investment ranged anywhere between $1,000 and $3,500 because there's different nuances and different components to it, right? There's different options. Now, I'm going to tell you, I can't guarantee that's going to be the price next time I open it up because I've been saying for a while I was going to significantly increase the price in an effort to try to keep the group smaller and to be able to spend more time and have a bigger impact with each client. So here's what I can tell you, right? Right now, it's not open for enrollment. Get on the wait list. You'll get notified, and then you'll get all the details, and you can make a decision on your own. There is no hard pitches here, right? The fortunate thing about where I'm at is I have over 1,000 people on my wait list, okay? So at any given point, there's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 that want to join the program, right? If you're one of them and you respond quickly, it's first come, first serve. It doesn't matter if they've been on the wait list for 6 months and you've been on the wait list for 1 day. If you get the notification that enrollment's open and you take action on it, you'll be accepted in the program, right? So that's how it works. All right. So I hope that helps. Okay. We're running short on time here. I'm going to try to pick 1 or 2 more questions and see how that goes. But before we do that, do me a huge favor. I'm going to ask a favor of each of you. Okay. If you have gotten value out of this live, right? What I want you to do is answer this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being 100%, would you like me to come back next week, next Monday, and do another Freight Broker Bootcamp live? Have you gotten enough value from 1 to 10? 1 meaning this was terrible, 5 meaning 10 meaning I would love for you to come back. I think this was amazing and I learned a lot. Hit me up in the comments right now with 1 to 10. I'd like to hear that. Let's get a little feedback from you guys. I'm going to put the ball in your court here for a minute. I've been dancing for an hour, answering all your questions and doing my best to help you. So let's hear from 1 to 10. Okay, Becky's a 10. Jim's a 10. Who else we got? All right, we got another 10, another 10. Okay, cool. Good. Let's hear from a few more. Listen, I'm not here for you to placate my ego. If it was a 6, just give me a 6 and tell me why. That's all. I just want to know why I was a 6. Okay, I'm totally cool you giving me a 6 or a 7 or an 8 or a 4 or 2. Or if I really suck, give me a 1. Okay? All right, cool. So I think we got some good feedback. I think you guys have enjoyed the questions. I think you guys have enjoyed this session. So here's what I'm going to ask you. Before I answer the last question, here's what I want you to do. Do me a favor. If you gave me a 10, or if you believe you got value out of this program, what I want you to do right now is go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/reviews. All I'm asking you to do is to give me a quick Google review. It's free. Honest review is all I'm looking for, right? If it's 1 star, 1 star. If it's 5 star, 5 stars. If you want to add a comment to it, great. Do me a huge favor. Give me a quick review. Come back in here. Let me know you gave me a review. Greatly appreciate it. And then we'll move on. I'll finish the last question or 2, and then we're going to wrap this up for today. That's my ask of you, right? You didn't get asked. You didn't have to put a credit card in order to be a part of this live coaching and training and Q&A, right? You didn't have to do anything. There was nothing there for you, but for you to show up, right? So I appreciate you showing up, but do me a huge favor and give me a quick Google review. All you got to do is go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/reviews. That helps other people in the community that are interested in joining the program understand the value that I provide, not only for free, but as a paid member of my Freight Broker Bootcamp or as a paid member of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. I'm sure there's a bunch of people here that are students or clients or that have went through my programs. I'm sure there's a bunch of people who haven't yet, but give me a quick review there on Google, and I really, really appreciate it. Awesome. Okay, cool. So I'll remember the people that give me those reviews, right? They show up on my Google profile, so I know who they are. So maybe the next time when we do Q&A, maybe I look for those people, and maybe I'll try to bump your question up to the top. I do appreciate whatever the honest review is, okay? I don't want a fake review. I want an honest review. All right, cool. So let's look at the last question or two. Yeah, McRae's Blue Book is a paid service, right? So you're going to need to pay for that. So yeah, that's an example of a paid database. But yeah, McRae's Blue Book is very, very popular. Okay, but it's not cheap. Advice for someone who's a novice on the side of freight, been in produce business for years and used to hire trucks. This side is all new to me. You know, the guy here, you probably aren't familiar with who TQL is, Total Quality Logistics. They're one of the largest freight brokerages out there. They're a multi-billion-dollar company, right? They started a little bit before me, maybe around 99, 2000, somewhere in there. Their background was the produce industry, much like you. They built one of the largest freight brokerages in the world. Now, I think the gentleman's name, the CEO is Ken Oaks, and I think he had a couple of partners in it. But the point is that if you are in the produce business and you're used to hiring brokers or hiring trucks, that will be a huge feather in your cap. So I think my biggest piece of advice for you is to niche down. And what you might want to do is you might want to use the experience and the stories and the knowledge and the skills that you learned in the produce industry to now become a broker who focuses in on that niche and serves that niche. Because think about it. If you have X number of years of experience in the produce business, let's say it's 10 years of experience in the produce industry, and then you convert over the broker and you start talking to people in the produce industry who are like you're going to be able to build rapport very, very quickly because you understand them better than a normal freight broker because you've been in their shoes. You'll be able to tell them stories that will help build rapport and trust. You'll understand better what it takes to pick up and deliver on time in good condition with no problems because you've been there, right? So my biggest piece of advice is develop a niche. And if you have that experience in produce, then you definitely, in my opinion, is you would want to tap into that and use that. That's my biggest piece of advice for you right now. Okay. So, I mean, if we sat here for an hour, I could give you 100 pieces of advice, but I think that's the one that I would really like you to cash in on. Okay. Thank you for the information. Can the rate confirmation form and the broker shipper and broker carrier form on your website be used as is, or do I need to contact a lawyer? I'm in Canada. Okay. So the broker, shipper, and agent contracts. If you're a member of Freight Broker Bootcamp, okay, if you're a paid member of Freight Broker Bootcamp, my startup program, I have a repository of contracts that you'll have access to. Now, those contracts are real contracts that you can access and use at your discretion. Now, here's the caveat. Here's the disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer, okay? And not every contract is going to fit every situation. So my disclaimer to you is I'm not a lawyer. I know students that have used those exact contracts, right? I've used these contracts are kind of spin-offs of my old contract, right? That are a little bit more modernized because again, I sold the company back in 2016. So yeah, I think you're in a really good place, but if it makes you feel good and you really want to check all the boxes, have a lawyer take a quick look at them. A lot of times lawyers, in order to justify their fee, are going to want to put some red marks on it, whatever the case may be. But yeah, I mean, those are really, really good foundational tools for you as a new broker or a new agent. So hope that helps. Good questions, guys. That's amazing. Who ended up doing a review? Did anybody end up doing a review? Did anybody end up doing a Google review? I hope you guys did. I know we had a bunch of people. You guys said that you got a lot of value out of this. I got a lot of 10s and a lot of good responses. I'm glad that you're getting good value. The price of admission is to go to freightbreakerbootcamp.com/reviews and give me an honest review. It'll literally take you 30 seconds. Okay. And that will be a huge favor to me. I won't forget it. Truly appreciate it. You guys, listen, if you are curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, you need help in the freight broker as a freight broker or freight agent getting started, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. That startup program, we had over 10,000 students go through that program. We offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. If you are looking for more advanced help specific to sales and how to get shippers, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. It's on the screen right now, /waitlist. That is a wait list for my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching and mentoring program. It's not open right now, but you will get notified when seats open up. And I am planning on opening up enrollment for that in the next, probably during Q1. Okay. January, February, March, not sure. Okay. But if you get on the wait list, you'll get notified. If you don't get on the wait list, you'll never even know, and you'll never get a chance to enroll or get the details. Okay. So I hope that helps. Hope you guys had a great day. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit the like button no matter where you're at, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're at. Do me a huge favor, hit the like button. Truly appreciate you guys being here. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you next week on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live.